You are walking toward a port city in the 18th century. You sense the water before you see it. The air carries a different weight here: salt, damp wood, tar, organic decay. The ground beneath your feet changes as well. Streets slope gently downward, guiding movement toward the harbor. Everything in this city seems oriented in that direction. As you walk, the soundscape shifts. You hear ropes creaking, wood striking wood, distant voices carried across open space. These sounds arrive unevenly, shaped by wind and tide. The city does not move to a single rhythm. It responds to arrivals. There is no clean boundary between city and port. Warehouses, taverns, workshops, and homes press close to the water. Streets do not end at the shoreline. They dissolve into docks, ramps, and piers. The sea is not outside the city. It is inside it. You pass buildings that appear older than those you saw inland. Stone walls darkened by moisture. Timber structures reinforced again and again. This city has grown outward from the water over generations, adapting to trade rather than planning for it. People move differently here. You notice it in their pace. Some hurry with purpose, drawn toward a ship that has just arrived. Others linger, watching, waiting, calculating. News travels through bodies before words. A sail on the horizon can shift the mood of an entire street. As you continue walking, the street grows more crowded. Not dense in the same way as an industrial city, but layered. Sailors, dockworkers, merchants, travelers, each occupies space differently. Clothing varies more here. Accents shift. Languages overlap. You pass a group of sailors unloading cargo. Their movements are practiced, efficient. Barrels roll. Crates scrape across planks. Goods move from ship to shore, then immediately inland. Nothing rests for long. Storage is temporary. Everything is in transit. The port dictates time. You notice how daily routines align with tides rather than hours. People glance toward the water as often as toward the sky. Work begins when ships arrive, pauses when they leave, resumes unpredictably. The city does not follow a regular schedule. It reacts. You walk past a tavern already open, despite the early hour. Inside, men drink, talk, negotiate. Some have just arrived. Others are waiting for departure. These spaces blur rest, work, and exchange. Information flows here as freely as alcohol. The smell changes constantly. Fish, spices, damp rope, smoke, human sweat. Each street carries traces of distant places. You are not just walking through a city, you are moving through connections. As you approach the docks, the scale opens up. Buildings pull back slightly. The sky feels larger. Masts rise in dense clusters, forming a forest of wood and rigging. Ships of different sizes and origins crowd the harbor. Some are newly arrived. Others prepare to leave. You sense how fragile this system is. A storm, a delay, a blockade, any disruption can ripple through the city. Food supplies, employment, prices, health all depend on what comes in and what goes out. The city lives with constant uncertainty. You pass port officials speaking with merchants. Documents change hands. Cargo is inspected. Control exists, but it is incomplete. Smuggling, shortcuts, and informal arrangements thrive in the gaps. The port attracts opportunity, but also risk. You notice how close people live to their work. Sailors sleep near the docks. Laborers gather wherever ships dock. Housing grows dense around the water, shaped by proximity rather than comfort. You walk along the edge of a quay, wooden planks worn smooth by decades of use. The water below moves slowly, carrying debris and reflections. This surface connects the city to places you cannot see. Diseases arrive this way too. You sense it in behavior rather than signs. People watch newcomers carefully. Certain ships are avoided. Rumors spread faster than facts. The port is a gateway, and not everything that enters is welcome. Still, the city depends on it. As you continue walking, you realize that this place is never fully settled. Its population shifts constantly. Faces change. Stories overlap. The city renews itself with every arrival. You are walking inside a city whose identity is shaped by movement. Not by what stays, but by what comes and goes. You move closer to the water, and work becomes more visible. The docks are not a single space, but a sequence of surfaces: stone quays, wooden piers, sloped ramps, floating platforms. Each one serves a specific function, shaped by tide, cargo, and habit rather than uniform design. Nothing here is symmetrical. Everything is adjusted. You walk along a quay where laborers are already at work. Their movements follow a rhythm learned through repetition. Barrels are rolled rather than lifted when possible. Crates are slid across planks. Ropes are thrown, caught, tightened, released. The work looks chaotic at a glance, but it is highly organized. Everyone knows where to stand. You notice how the ground bears the marks of this activity. Stone is chipped at the edges. Wood is polished smooth by friction. Iron rings embedded in the quay show layers of wear. The port records its history through use. Cargo arrives in mixed forms. Foodstuffs, raw materials, manufactured goods. Some are familiar. Others are not. You see markings you do not recognize, symbols from distant ports. The city absorbs these objects without ceremony. Their value matters more than their origin. Time behaves differently here. Work surges when a ship docks, then pauses suddenly. Laborers wait, sitting on coils of rope or crates, watching the water. They are paid by task or by day, not by hour. Uncertainty is built into their routine. You pass a group negotiating payment before unloading begins. Voices rise briefly, then settle. Agreements are made quickly. Delay costs everyone. The port rewards speed and flexibility. As you walk, you notice how roles are clearly defined. Some men handle ropes. Others move cargo. Others record quantities, mark crates, oversee transfer. These divisions are informal but rigid. Reputation matters. Trust is earned through consistency. The presence of water shapes everything. Tides dictate when heavy cargo can move. Low tide exposes mud and debris, slowing work. High tide allows ships to sit higher, easing transfer. The city bends its labor to these cycles. You watch a gangway lowered from a ship. Sailors descend carrying personal belongings. They move differently from dock workers. Their balance reflects life at sea. They scan the port with quick, assessing looks. For some, this city is familiar. For others, entirely new. The docks are where worlds meet physically. You pass warehouses pressed close to the water. Their doors stand open. Inside, goods are stacked high, arranged for temporary holding. Storage here is never permanent. Everything waits for the next movement inland or outward. The smell inside these spaces is dense, with grain, salt, spices, dampness. Air circulates poorly. Workers move carefully to avoid collapse. Injuries are common. Space is tight, margins small. You notice how closely commerce and risk coexist. A slipping plank, a snapped rope, a falling crate, accidents happen quickly. There is little buffer between routine and harm. As you continue, you see officials inspecting cargo. Their presence is visible but limited. They cannot check everything. The volume is too great. Gaps form naturally. Informal trade thrives in those gaps. The city depends on this balance between order and improvisation. You pass a narrow lane leading away from the docks. It is already filling with carts carrying goods inland. Streets closest to the port are designed less for comfort than for flow. Housing gives way to storage, then to markets. Movement is constant. You realize that the port does not sleep in the same way as inland districts. Work resumes whenever ships arrive, regardless of hour. Lanterns and torches appear at night. Shadows stretch across the water. Labor continues. As you walk on, the sound of waves mixes with human voices and work. The city's identity feels fluid here, shaped by exchange rather than permanence. This is not just where goods arrive. It is where the city constantly remakes itself. As you walk away from the busiest docks, the crowd does not thin. It changes. Here, movement is less urgent but more varied. People linger longer, talk more, watch more. The port has pulled in lives from far beyond the city's hinterland, and they overlap here in ways you would not see inland. You notice it first in faces. Some are familiar, shaped by local life and routine. Others carry signs of distance, different skin tones, different scars, different ways of standing and looking. Clothing varies more than anywhere else in the city. Cuts, fabrics, colors, and tell stories of where someone has been, not just who they are. Languages overlap in fragments. You hear words you do not understand, mixed with local speech. Conversations move fluidly between tongues, using gestures when language fails. Misunderstandings are common, but so is negotiation. This city has learned to function without full clarity. You pass a small market near the water. Stalls sell fish just unloaded from ships, alongside goods that have traveled weeks or months to arrive. Spices, dried fruits, fabrics, unfamiliar tools. Some items are rare and expensive. Others are already becoming ordinary through repetition. The global enters the local quietly. You see how this affects daily habits. Food changes first. Cooking smells here are more varied, less predictable. Certain ingredients appear suddenly, then disappear when trade routes shift. Diet is shaped by arrival schedules as much as seasons. You walk past a group gathered around a traveler telling a story. He gestures broadly, describing distant places. Some listen closely. Others half believe. In a port city, distance feels smaller. The world feels reachable, even if most will never leave. News spreads unevenly. A ship can bring weeks-old information that still reshapes local decisions. Prices change. Alliances shift. Rumors of war, disease, or opportunity ripple outward from the docks. You notice how quickly the city reacts. Certain taverns fill with specific groups. Sailors gravitate to familiar flags. Merchants cluster by trade. Locals position themselves strategically, near information, near opportunity. Social life reorganizes itself around access. The port blurs social boundaries. You see laborers speaking with merchants, sailors bargaining with shopkeepers, travelers negotiating lodging. Hierarchies exist, but proximity softens them. Everyone needs something from someone else. You also notice tension. Not everyone is welcomed equally. Certain newcomers are watched more closely. Some neighborhoods are more open than others. Trust is conditional, earned through repeated presence rather than origin. The city balances openness with caution. You pass lodging houses where people stay briefly, days, sometimes hours. Rooms are sparse. Turnover is constant. These spaces feel temporary, like the people inside them. Life here is lived with an awareness of departure. Even relationships are provisional. You see how families adapt to this environment. Some rely on port work entirely. Others diversify, one member tied to shipping, another to markets or services. Stability comes not from permanence, but from flexibility. Children grow up seeing strangers daily. They learn early how to observe, how to judge tone, posture, intent. Curiosity mixes with caution. The port teaches social literacy quickly. As you continue walking, you sense how the city's identity stretches beyond its walls. People here think in routes, not borders. Inland cities feel distant. The sea feels immediate. You realize that this constant mixing changes how people understand themselves. Identity becomes layered, local, occupational, experiential. Who you are matters less than where you've been, who you know, what you carry. The port does not erase difference. It makes it visible, daily, unavoidable. And as you move through this crowd, you understand that this is what it means to live where the world arrives, not as an idea, but as a routine. As you move farther from the open docks, the port does not loosen its grip on the city. It spreads inward through enclosed spaces. You pass a line of taverns clustered close to the waterfront. Their doors are already open, regardless of the hour. Inside, light flickers from candles and oil lamps. These places are never fully quiet. They absorb people in transit, sailors between voyages, laborers between jobs, travelers waiting for passage. Time behaves differently here. Some drink to celebrate arrival. Others drink to mark delay. Conversations overlap. Bargaining, storytelling, warnings, rumors. News moves faster inside these rooms than anywhere else in the city, but accuracy is never guaranteed. You walk past open windows and hear fragments. Names of ports, prices of goods, mentions of storms, sickness, opportunity. Information is traded as casually as alcohol. These spaces connect strangers quickly. Near the taverns, warehouses dominate entire streets. Their scale interrupts the city's usual proportions. Long walls of stone and timber block light. Doors are wide, reinforced, designed for movement rather than appearance. You step closer and notice how these buildings function as buffers. Goods do not move directly from ship to market. They pause here, waiting. Grain, textiles, tools, barrels of unknown contents. Everything is counted, marked, stacked. Storage is not neutral. You see guards posted at entrances. Theft is expected. Fire is feared more than anything. A single spark could erase months of trade. Buckets, hooks, and barrels of water are kept nearby. Everyone knows what is at stake. The air inside these spaces is thick. Dust, mold, dampness. Workers move carefully. Some wear cloths over their mouths. Others do not. Long-term health is rarely considered here. Speed matters more. You notice how closely risk and reward sit together. The same ships that bring profit also bring instability. You see it in how people watch arriving crews. Certain vessels are avoided. Others draw crowds. Quarantine exists in theory, but enforcement is inconsistent. Economic pressure competes with caution. Disease travels quietly. You do not see it immediately. You sense it in behavior. Doors closed longer than usual. Ships held offshore. Goods unloaded slowly or left untouched. Rumors spread faster than symptoms. The city remembers past outbreaks. As you walk, you pass a temporary barrier blocking a small street near the port. A sign warns against entry. People obey it loosely. Some detour. Others slip through. Hunger and work do not wait for health measures. The port forces constant calculation. You notice how the city has learned to live with uncertainty rather than eliminate it. People weigh risk daily, whether to unload, to trade, to host, to enter a tavern, to take in a lodger. Decisions are made quickly, with limited information. This environment sharpens instincts. You pass a lodging house where travelers come and go rapidly. Rooms are aired out between occupants. Bedding is changed when possible. The turnover is relentless. These spaces are necessary, and everyone knows they are dangerous. The port's openness is its strength and its vulnerability. You feel how tension underlies the apparent liveliness. Laughter exists, but so does vigilance. Trust is provisional. Stability depends on what the next ship brings, or does not bring. As you continue walking, the noise of the docks fades slightly, replaced by muffled sounds through thick walls. The city feels heavier here, enclosed, watchful. This is the price of connection. To live where the world arrives is to accept that not everything can be controlled. As you keep walking, you begin to feel how deeply the port has shaped the city's identity. This is not just a place where ships arrive. It is a place where nothing is fully settled. People come and go. Goods pass through. Stories overlap without resolving. The city exists in a permanent state of transition. You notice how few things here feel final. Buildings are sturdy, but rarely permanent in purpose. A warehouse becomes a market. A tavern becomes lodging. A home becomes storage. Space adapts to movement rather than resisting it. The city has learned not to fix itself too tightly to any single function. You pass residents who have lived here all their lives. Even they speak in terms of routes and connections. They measure time by notable arrivals, by famous ships, by years when trade flourished or failed. Memory here is tied to movement, not stillness. The sea rewrites routine. You see it in how people plan their days. Work, meals, rest, all remain flexible. Sudden opportunity can interrupt everything. So can sudden loss. The city has trained its inhabitants to stay alert, to remain ready. Certainty is rare. Adaptability is valued. You notice how relationships reflect this instability. Friendships form quickly and dissolve without ceremony. Trust is functional rather than sentimental. People learn how much to invest and when to let go. Permanence is not assumed. Children grow up watching ships leave without knowing if they will return. They learn early that absence is normal. That change is expected. That the world is larger than their street and closer than it seems. The port compresses distance. You walk past a vantage point overlooking the harbor. From here, the city feels small compared to the open water. The horizon is visible. It invites imagination, but also reminds the city of its dependence. What arrives by sea shapes prices, health, culture, and survival. The city cannot fully protect itself from the outside world. It can only respond. You sense how this constant exposure creates resilience, but also fatigue. Living at the edge of global movement requires attention. People here are rarely fully at rest. Even in quiet moments, they listen for signs of change. The city's openness defines its character. It is more tolerant in some ways, more cautious in others. It welcomes difference, but watches it closely. It absorbs influence, but rarely without consequence. As you slow your pace, the port remains active behind you. Ships shift in the water. Cranes and rigging creak softly. Voices carry across the harbor. Movement continues whether you watch it or not. This city does not revolve around a single center. It revolves around exchange. To live here in the 18th century is to accept uncertainty as routine, to understand that the world does not arrive as an abstract idea, but as cargo, as people, as risk. You are walking through a place where the local and the global meet every day. Not in theory, but in practice.